In this video, I'll show you how to make groovy warped text in Affinity. Let's get started. To begin, we need to make some guides to help us as we warp the text. For our first guide, I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and then I'll click and drag out a rectangle. I'm going to click and drag on the edges to make sure this is centered in our document. If you don't see these snapping lines, make sure you have snapping turned on right up here. Then I'm just going to adjust the colors of this. First, I'll give it no fill color by clicking on this button right here. And then I'm going to adjust the black stroke. You can't really see it right now, but if we go to the context toolbar, we can adjust how big this stroke is. So I'll just drag this up until we can see it. This rectangle will act as an outer barrier, and all of our text will fit inside of it. Next, we need to add a few curved lines to act as a guide inside of the rectangle. To make these curved lines, I'm going to grab the pen tool. Then I'll click on one edge of the rectangle. I'll find the center, and I'll click and drag. And then I'll find the other side, and I'll click once. Now we can adjust how this line looks by using the node tool. You can find this tool by clicking on the little arrow next to the pen tool, and then clicking on the node tool. Using this tool, we can select the different nodes and adjust the line. I'm going to make my line curve upward and then downward by putting this node at an angle. I think I'll also drag this node down a little bit to make sure our first letter has enough space. And maybe I'll drag this node up a little. So now we have a nice wavy line. This looks pretty good, but again, we can't see the stroke. So up in the context toolbar, I'll increase the stroke. Okay, this looks really good. I'm just going to duplicate this using the Move tool. So with the Move tool selected, now we can click and drag on this curved line, and we can hold Command or Control and Shift as we do that to duplicate it. To make sure these are nice and centered, I'll hold Shift to select both of these lines, and then I'll click and drag until we see the center snapping lines. So now you can see we have 3 sections in our rectangle, so we can add 3 words to this. So let's go ahead and do that next. I'm going to select the Artistic Text tool, and then I'll click and drag, and we can type in our first word. I'll double-click to select all of the letters, and then I'll change the font to something groovy. Feel free to use whatever font you want. I'm going to use this one. So before we make the text warped, I'm going to make a couple of adjustments. First, I'm going to click until I see the cursor again, and then I'm going to adjust the kerning. This is the space between each letter. And you can adjust this by holding Alt or Option, and then using the arrow keys to move the letters in or out. I think that spacing looks pretty good. So I'm going to grab the Move tool, and then I'm going to move the text so that it lines up with the very edge of the rectangle. Then I'll make the text bigger until the bottom of the M sits right here at the bottom of this line. Then the last thing I'm going to do, you might not like this, but for this warped text effect, it really does work well. I'm going to stretch the text this way to fit the rectangle. I'll hold Shift and then click and drag to make it fit from side to side. Now it's time to warp this text. I'll go to the top of the screen to Vector. Then I'll go down to New Warp Group, and quad. I'll go to the center of our rectangle and I'll click once on this edge to create another node. So right now we have nodes on the four corners, and with clicking, we've created a center node. We can use these nodes to warp the text to fit this line perfectly. So first, I'm going to select this node right here at the bottom middle, and I'll move it upward. You can see it's lined up with this line, but the rest of the text needs to be curved a little differently. So I'm going to pull this downward. And you can see this is fitting a bit better. But I think I need to adjust this node. I'll pull this node up until it matches the line. And now you can start to see it's following this line pretty well. I need to pull this node up until it hits this corner, and then I'll pull it downward until the line matches. So now you can see we've created our first word. This looks great. I'm going to repeat this process for the other two words. So let's grab the artistic text tool, and then we can click and drag to make a letter. Then I'll type in the next word. I'll double click and change the font. Then we can adjust the kerning between the letters using Alt or Option and the arrow keys. Then, using the Move tool, I'm just going to make this first letter fit perfectly right in here. So you can see the top and bottom of the G are lined up nicely with these two lines. And now while holding Shift, I'll stretch the text to fit the rectangle. Okay, with that done, we can make another warp group by going to the top of the screen to Vector, New Warp Group, Quad. Once again, I'll find the center point and I'll click on that edge to create another node. And now we can adjust the nodes so they match these lines. Now, this center word is probably the trickiest because for the top word, we have a straight line, and for the bottom word, we'll have a straight line. But for the middle word, all of the lines are warped, so just be careful as you're adjusting this. I'll drag the two middle nodes upward so they match. And I'll drag these nodes upward so they match up with the line. And then we can go ahead and adjust each of these nodes. Okay, I'm just going to repeat this one last time. So artistic text tool, click and drag, type out the text, double click, change the font, adjust the kerning, use the Move tool to stretch this to fit, hold Shift to stretch it, and then we can make this a warp group by going to Vector, New Warp Group, Quad, find the center, add that node, and click and drag to adjust each of these nodes. Okay, now we have 3 words that are warped pretty well, but I do want to show you one thing. If any of your letters are going at an angle instead of straight up and down, you may need to pull some of the nodes a little bit more to adjust this. This is totally normal, don't worry about it. Just make a few little adjustments and everything should be straight again. Okay, with that, I'm just going to delete all of our guide layers by holding Shift and clicking to select all of them. Then I'll click the trash can to delete them. Then I'm just going to grab the Move tool to give each of these words a little bit more breathing room. So I'll hold Shift and use the arrow keys to move each of these words. And I think that looks pretty good. Now we can change the colors and add any effects that we want. To do this, make sure you have the layer selected, not the group. Just to show you this, if you have the group selected, you can see the outline here isn't covering the entire text. So if you add a layer effect to this, it might not work properly. I'll show you this by adding an outline here, and I'll change the color of it so it's clearer. You can see this effect is only happening inside of these bounds, so it doesn't look quite right. So instead, open up the group, and then click here on the text, and now it should work fine. Just to show you, I'll add another layer effect, and I'll increase the radius, and you can see now it's affecting the entire text. I don't really want that outline effect, I just wanted to show you that. So I'll turn this off. And instead, I'm just going to select each of these text layers and I'll change their colors. I want the first word to be the same color, so I'll select that blue color over here. And then I'll change this last color to a green color. And then we can go ahead and add a background color using the rectangle tool. I'll click and drag to cover the entire document, and then I'll click and drag this layer to the bottom. By the way, I want to mention that you can go back and adjust the warping at any time by double-clicking on the warp group. Now you can see all of the nodes again, so you can change them however you want. And you can even use the Move tool to double-click and continue typing. Of course, I don't want to do that with this design, but just so you know, you can always alter this more. All right, just like that, now you know how to warp text in Affinity. And if you enjoyed this video, I'll leave a link in the video description to my free Affinity course. In the course, you'll learn 10 simple steps to make any photo amazing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Affinity Revolution tutorial.